I do wonder, they had the 30 artists selected to the Real Magic Creative Academy workshop at Coke's headquarters. I really want to know what that is, because is that like Phoenix University? Is that one of those things where, are there diplomas at the end of this? How does this work? So I would like to go. If Coke is listening, please fly me to Atlanta. I want to see what the Real Magic Creative Academy workshop looks like.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS of the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. Alrighty, welcome to another edition of Punchy, where we are breaking down the stories, topics, themes, and questions that matter to challenger marketers of today. And today we have a very special guest, a man with a fantastic name, although I have to say, you have me beat on the last name. I think Eric Gray, in terms of like Eric and then, a last name, I mean, you've got to be up there. But either way, Eric, it's great to have you joining us today.
Happy to be here. And just, it gets even easier. The middle name is also 4 letters. It's Paul. So it's just very easy. My parents were smart in that strategic way they named me. So, but happy to be here.
Amazing. Eric, could you give a quick introduction for yourself and what you do?
Yeah. So my name's Eric Gray. I am the Senior Director of Content Innovation at Universal Destinations and Experiences. We've recently rebranded it, so that's new. We were Parks and Resorts for a long time, and hopefully people have seen some of the news that's come out lately about what's happening. But it's exciting. It's exciting news. I've been at Universal for about 10 years. I've led everything from social content, influencer, innovation. But I'd say that kind of the heart of what I love to do is I love to create teams, creative teams that are building content that connects, storytelling, and helps build brands. And so that's kind of where my passion lies. And so we've got a wonderful team of people that I'll set up here today and represent that have been doing a lot of cool things for Universal for a long time. So and I think that we are a challenger. So I love being here, right? Like, we all know the big mouse down the street is the market leader, and we got to look and act different. And so I've been following Rival for a bit, as I told Eric a couple weeks ago. And so excited to jump in and get on Punchy and have some fun with you guys.
Is that what you call them? The big mouse down the street? Is that like the internal terminology that you use?
So I don't know if we're comfortable that I just said that, to be honest. So we'll see, I guess.
All right. Well, a lot of what you talked about, we're going to touch on today, and that's part of why I wanted to have you on the show. You and I connected recently, and to share a lot of philosophy and perspective. So I'm excited to get your input on our 3 stories for today. So let's get into it. We are going to cover WPP expanding into influencer marketing with a couple acquisitions in the space, Coke asking consumers to generate new art with an AI platform, and why you need both an audience and a community. And before we get into the story, I just want to give a quick shout out to the members of our newly opened WhatsApp marketing community, Rival Amp. Eric, you are now a member because I chucked you in there. I didn't really give you an option, but it's been amazing to me a week after opening it up, just some of the conversations and even for me, the value that's come out of that. So if you're listening, chances are if you're listening, you're probably already part of AMP. But if you are a brand side marketer out there and interested in connecting with and having conversations using a sounding board with other senior marketers, hit us up and we will add you to the AMP group. On with the show. Story number 1, WPP expands influencer marketing buy-in with GOAT acquisition. This is from Marketing Dive, but it was covered in a few different places. So quick summary of the story. WPP has acquired the influencer marketing agency GOAT, which has worked with brands such as Dell, Meta, and Uber. GOAT will become part of Group M, WPP's media's investment group. The merged unit is going to retain the GOAT name, actually, and employ over 300 individuals and have a presence in over 30 markets. Advertiser spending on influencer marketing is expected to exceed $6 billion USD in 2023, and 65% of marketers plan to increase influencer marketing budgets in the next 6 months. Quick sub-story, because I think it contributes to the larger theme here. WPP has also acquired influencer marketing agency, Obviously, who was started by a friend of mine. So shout out to May and congrats on the exit. And Dubose and Jetta, I don't know if you remembered, we actually went on the Obviously boat at Cannes last year. Do either of you remember that? Yeah. So
No,
know.
I went on too many boats. I don't remember which boat we went on. I
don't think we went on a lot of boats. We weren't invited on a lot of boats, but May did it once, and their boat was nice. Yeah. All right, so let's get into opinions. Jenna, you've got 1 minute for your initial response to this story.
God knows I hate to say nice things about anything that wire and paper products does, but I don't know. I actually kind of like this. I'm thinking about this, like influencer marketing, especially with kind of like what's happening with like the fragmentation and fracturing of a lot of different media platforms that make like executional, like biddable or programmatic buys like a little bit tough in some of these places. I think has really made me rethink what my opinion on influencer marketing has been over the past couple of years. And I obviously, everybody who knows me knows that I'm strong opinions, strongly held, and I've been down on influencers for a while. But like, I think that, I obviously do still have a lot of the same reservations, but I think that this is probably a good move by WPP. I think, like I say, especially like on TikTok and a lot of other, like as we start to move much more towards, content and context-based marketing strategies within like paid media, I think influencers are, I don't know if I'm going to go so far to say like a good buy.
Can't quite say it, can you?
I can't quite do it. I can't quite get there. There's just something holding me back. But no, but I think this is interesting. I think that, we've known the GOAT guys for a long time too. And
they've done a good job.
Yeah. And they do, as good a work as I think, it is possible to do with influencers. I still obviously have a lot of caveats about the measurability and impact and cost efficiency and et cetera, of those types of platforms, as well as the social ramifications. But I don't know. This seems like a, probably a strategically sound move from WPP. I don't know why one has been incorporated into Group M and one into VMLY&R. That's beyond my, willingness to fathom the corporate strategy. But yeah, there, I said a vaguely positive thing about.
Yeah. And for those listening, I have a very surprised face on because that is not the response I was looking for. But look at that. Strong opinion, strongly held, that still change and evolve with time. Dubose, what are your thoughts on this story and trends?
Well, I think first off, I started my career as a proud employee of wire and plastic products. So, I'm a little bit biased.
I joke. This is what people call WPP now, wire and plastic.
No, that's what WPP was. So Martin Sorrell bought they bought a holding company in the mid 80s. And the holding company made shopping carts and plastic products. Up until recently, the company still exists. Yeah. It's called Delphinware now. And basically, WPP, still on their balance sheet, had a small producer of bathware goods and shopping carts. So when you need a corporation in the 80s, any port and any storm, and in this case, Sorrell was like, shopping carts in Britain, why not? Every little helps. So, generally, I think one of the things I've always found about WPP, and especially Group M, because I started my career at Mindshare, is I think, they're not going to be the first on something. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think there's definitely a sense of scale is going to be the gift there over innovation. And I think one of the interesting things I think is adopting influencer startups like this, acqui-hiring kind of talent in, and then putting it into Group M shows that I think a maturation in the influencer space has occurred to where you can scale kind of good standards for it, bring in best in class, and try to bring it to clients who probably were going to be a little bit wary of it before. But now it's going to be holding some of the Group M kind of gatekeeping to it, and that'll be interesting. On the idea of why one goes into Group M and one goes into VMLY&R, I thought for a while there had to be some kind of M pun in everything that went into Group M, but I think they dropped that years ago. I think it's probably just the idea that I have a theory that the world's largest holding companies aren't actually aware that the other bit of the holding company is buying something. So this may be the case of two people wearing the same outfit to a party. But I imagine one can effectively hide in VML until the other starts to wander in another direction or such. So interesting. And, as usual, I think once WPP acquires something, you tend to go, it's probably hit a large scale of maturation.
Eric, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. And I love hearing Jenna's take. It felt like it was hard for her to say some of those things. At Universal, we've done some influencer marketing, not to the scale of some other brands. I probably was in a firm camp of like, don't buy it. Don't really want to pay someone with a camera pointed at themselves, trying to look pretty to walk through our destination and tell people how great it was. I was in that camp for a long time. And then we started working with people that were more in the creator ilk. So they were actually, I think, creating content that was valuable and differentiated. And I think something that brands struggle with, right, in-house. And so I am a firm believer in influencer, but it's a specific strategy and a specific way in. If you're looking for an opportunity to help do something with your brand and to reach new audiences, that you can go after and find an influencer that I think can do something compelling that you're struggling to do with your own brand, which, by the way, that's not great news, but it's real life. I think there is something to be said about that. And we've worked with some really big influencers, and some great influencers, and the stuff that they bring to the table, and the way they kind of open up their creativity has been pretty cool. Now, measurability is definitely still in question, but it's not performance marketing, right? I think that's another way to look at it. At least in the strategy I'm trying to share, it's one that's about would look at as performance marketing. I'm sure there's some people that are paying someone to show some socks and they're hoping they're going to sell socks immediately. But a lot of it for me in the strategy I say would be in kind of what is the mix of influencer and how can you leverage that, considering the media is so divergent. People are everywhere. People are trying to find ways to connect, and advertising is consistently getting harder. And so I think it's understandable. And then from a business standpoint, from WPP, which, by the way, I learned that too just now, Eric. So you're not alone. Look, I think that there is a little bit of the second strategy here, right? This isn't new. They wanted to see if it's a thing, and they're not diving into something that I think is positioning them as an innovator. They're diving in because they have to. They realize there's a market. They realize they got people that are coming to them and saying, I wish I had this, or could we do this here? That to me, I'm not in-house, but that to me feels like something that has to be going on. And niche agencies are a big draw for big behemoth agencies, right? They're doing things that they can't do and haven't scaled. And so I think it's just a faster, no shocker, it's a faster way in. And so I do think there's something that they're seeing that we're not seeing, and it's probably something they're being asked by a lot of the people they work with. That's longer than 60 seconds. Hope I didn't break you.
All good. No, I do think it's really interesting, your point about kind of thinking about influencers more on the content creator side of things. And I think there's an increasing shift. And I was trying to remember who I was talking to this week. I was talking to a relatively big retail brand, and they were saying that actually all of their content generation they get from influencers. So they view it primarily as a content production investment that has some distribution to it, as opposed to a distribution investment that has some content production to it. But yeah, it seems like WPP is seeing a lot of opportunity in this space. It's not like they weren't doing anything or their agencies didn't offer this before, but they wanted to double down. And I would imagine, if you're an agency at the scale of a GOAT or a obviously, and been building it for a while, the way the market is right now, like it's probably a good time to be an acquirer for these types of things. All right. Let's move on to story number 2 from Marketing Dive. Coca-Cola asks consumers to generate art with a new AI platform. So Coke has introduced, quote, Create Real Magic, an AI platform utilizing OpenAI's GPT-4. We're going to need to get a swear bucket for ChatGPT like we used to have for the metaverse. And DALL-E in collaboration with OpenAI and Bain. Interesting, Bain & Company. So Create Real Magic allows unique AI-generated Coke-inspired art through user-provided text prompts. Users can access Coke-branded AI art elements with a chance for their work to feature on New York City and London billboards. Dubose, genuinely effective marketing campaign or stunty headline-grabbing advertising crap? You got to pick one of those options, then you can expand.
Can't it be both?
I think I think there's something interesting here, that it's a Mad Libs of organizations. This is like one of the worst, four different individuals walk into a bar style thing where you're like OpenAI, Bain & Company, and Coca-Cola got together and decided to do something. I would have loved to have seen that first meeting. But I think, generally there's a few things here that I really like. It's obviously a strong flex on the idea that co-creation campaigns are not a new thing, right? And there's very few brands that have recognizable enough assets and large enough scale to ask people to create assets around them effectively. Heinz did one in Canada a while back I really loved. where they were asking people to basically draw a Heinz bottle. And then they just put all of those up. They were like, right, iconic shape, go do it. Here you go. Like, yeah, if you are a startup brand, you're not going to be able to do this. Like you have to have a community, you have to have recognizable assets, you have to have tools. So to that point, it's just like every other kind of co-creation campaign. I think you layer on the idea of giving people better tools to create content. That's just a smart play on top of it. And that's all this is. I don't think it's a ChatGPT campaign. It's a co-creation campaign that happens to involve tools that make things easier to create, like ChatGPT or DALL-E. So I think when you look at it like that, I think there's something to it and there's substance to it, and it's a flex on the rest of the beverage category. I have a natural cynicism around kind of how it may be promoted, because I think, the challenge here is we found something new, people like it, we don't need to really promote it like it's a normal campaign, they'll find it. And I think if that's the case, then it does become a bit more of the kind of gimmicky thing. But I think if you were to support this like any co-creation campaign, give a platform there, push this out where it needs to be, leverage the iconography that you have available to you, it's just a smart play at a relevant time. I do wonder, they had the 30 artists selected to the Real Magic Creative Academy workshop at Coke's headquarters. I really want to know what that is, because is that like Phoenix University? Is that one of those things where, are there diplomas at the end of this? How does this work? So I would like to go. If Coke is listening, please fly me to Atlanta. I want to see what the Real Magic Creative Academy workshop looks like.
Dubose, just because you did NFT art of your dog does not make you an artist, I have to say.
Everyone is an artist nowadays, just like everyone can be creative.
You know what I said, and I'm very strict about this, that there is no selling in the rival AMP group, but if you want to try to sell one of your queso NFTs, I'll allow it.
Eric, that's very kind of you. The problem being that I think even when NFTs were expensive, I was cheap. So now I think I may be almost like some kind of deflationary cautionary tale. But if anybody wants a picture of a Cavapoo drawn by me, hit me up. You know where to find me.
You heard it here first. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, it really took a turn there, but I'll let.
Oh, it tends to.
I tend to agree that yes, it's relevant, trendy. Let's go do something. Let's take this powerhouse brand and attach it to something that the world, at least from a North American standpoint, and what's in my feed, is just kind of talking about and trying to figure out and trying to discover. I had probably two thoughts. First one is, yes, it's co-creation. Yes, it's UGC. These things are not new. But I will say that there's a lot of brands that are uncomfortable giving their brand off to their customers to play with and to create within. And I think there's a lot of brand managers that is almost like a violation of training and their education, and they would never consider it. It's just such a faux pas. And as someone that's managed social teams and content teams and community groups, I think there's no better way than to connect with your customers. Is if you have a brand that people care about that much, that they want to go and play around and create iterations of your brand. Now, do I think this is the best example of that? I don't know. It's trendy. It's fine. It's fine. But I think there are some great examples of it, right? When you start to literally let people shape and push, and this probably gets into our next topic a little bit around community. I feel like that you're doing something, giving something away that creates authenticity and connection with an audience. And I think that for future brands, being less strong-held with your brand, it's going to be really important. And I think today that's not a widely held opinion. There are things that you just don't touch, don't mess with. We have those at Universal, right? We have a Universal globe that we would never let anyone touch, that mark. But why not? Right? I think that there's ways to still hold on to your brand credibility while also letting people in aside the door and kind of, shape, what your brand is and what it can be.
Okay, cool. Jenna, your thoughts? And I really like the very subtle product placement of your Diet Coke bottle in this episode as well.
Well, saw that.
We should get. You think they'll sponsor the show? I think we should reach out to them.
No, we want Puncher to sponsor the show.
Does this mean I can't call the Coca-Cola Creators Academy of the University of Phoenix? Have I lost 2 sponsors by doing that?
Isn't like Diet Coke gets treated like whole separately from like the Coke master brand? Like the Diet Coke is like they've got like a whole separate It's a different brand, different brand managers, Eric. Yeah, I don't know. Like any brand would be envious of the position that Coke is in. Like, to Dubos's point earlier of like, they have such distinctive assets that like they feel pretty comfortable handing off like, the Coca-Cola cursive or like the Coca-Cola bottle, like those things. Pretty much in any context, there's not really anything that anybody can do to those elements to me and lose their distinctiveness. So I think that this is cool from a UGC perspective. I am kind of interested. The other thing though with like really big companies like this is, they also tend to be a little bit risk averse. And I'm a little curious to see this happen just because I know that there's like some pending lawsuits from a bunch of, although actually I think that DALL-E and OpenAI are not like any of the named defendants on the use of generative AI for images over the copyrighted material used in the training sets. So I'd be interested to see like kind of like behind the scenes, like what the review will be for like the final products that get actually pushed out. I know with a couple of the lawsuits that are pending, like it's actually like, there's a bunch of legal questions around those things, but it's just curious to see like, hey, like where the risk tolerance is for people like using these tools. Whereas we were talking about this at breakfast today, Eric, when like the regulation on these matters is not settled. It's not super clear, how to deal with copyright and trademark issues in this matter, which is a little ironic that Coke is, who's probably behind the mouse, must be one of the biggest trademark enforcers on the planet, I would be willing to bet, and they're willing to take a jump into this fray. So that's it. That's my thoughts on that.
Cool. Any other builds on this story before we move on?
I think there's a really great point there about, there is a life cycle here of brand assets that I think are really interesting. And I think as a marketer, if you're looking at this and you're going, I want to hand over everything I've built to a community to remix it, to change it, to do something with it. I think there's an interesting question you have to ask yourself first on, have you grown what you stand for enough to where people are going to recognize it when people change it or layer other filters on it? Because I think there's going to be a natural inclination. You're going to see more of this, not less. And I think the effectiveness for this comes on how much you can change the assets that a brand holds or allow users to change those and still confer it back to your company, still confer it back to the brand. And I think that litmus test is going to be really interesting because this one, it fits perfectly. I mean, I imagine that the Real Magic Creative Academy might just be a trap to get people who've infringed on copyright. So someone might want to check, maybe drive by slowly, quickly. But I think, overall, there's still that idea that for a lot of other brands, it's not going to make a lot of sense. So I think there needs to be a common sense approach to this.
Just interested in what a slow, quick drive by.
Like slowly do it. Don't draw attention to yourself. But when you get out of there, get out of there. Like just go quickly out of there.
Got it. Okay. Moving on to our last story of the week. This is more of an opinion piece, but it was first published on Adweek, actually from a CMO of seems like kind of like a boutique high-end personal care and beauty CPG business here in the UK. But anyway, the headline is, your audience and your community are not the same thing, something that we definitely believe in and preach here at Rival. And here's why you need both. So, quick summary of some of the key points from the article. An audience represents one-to-many relationships, while communities involve many-to-many interactions and shared interests. And there's a couple good strategic tips in this article of how to leverage platforms that encourage two-way conversations, invest in moments that are hard to scale, empower your brand ambassadors, and allow communities autonomy. So, Eric, I think it'd be great to start with you because it kind of builds on what you were saying before of, as a brand, the ability to kind of, or the willingness to be able to let go a little bit. And I think that that's an important part to building a genuine community, is being able to foster conversation, value, interaction between people that is around the brand, but it plays more of a facilitator role than actually being the voice speaking one to many. So what are your thoughts on this topic in this article?
Yeah, I probably see it, and all of these things that we're talking about are probably different levels based on the brand, are you a startup, or are you a big brand, are you a solo entrepreneur, or are you an agency? But just kind of generally speaking, I think that they are interconnected. I don't think they're the same thing, but I think they are interconnected. And I think about this audience idea, building an audience one to many. There's a reason why you're following this thing that's building an audience. It's creating value in your life. It's creating education. It's creating entertainment. whatever it is, there's a value exchange for being an audience member. My kids are addicted to Dude Perfect right now. There is something about Dude Perfect that entertains them, keeps them coming back, and is very much a one-to-many. But there is I believe, a transition for anyone that has an audience to turn it into a community, and to build community around the same idea of the way you are doing audience. So yes, they are different. And I think they're both very important and paramount, but it really depends on who you are, what you're doing, what the brand is. I'm a big fan of this because, I've run social teams. We've built, we have a whole universal annual pass holders community Facebook group with over 250,000 people that are there, like-minded people connecting, interacting about what? About our brand, about what they love about universal destinations and experiences. And so, I get the take. It probably feels not as strong as a take as as I would see. I kept reading the article and I was like, where's the thing that I think is going to be this like violent point of view? And it felt a bit general. No offense to Shire. It's a great article, and I love anyone that's talking about community connectedness, creating value in people's lives through brand and storytelling and content. So totally buy in. But I don't think I think the headline tries to grab your attention like there's a debate. I don't know if there's a debate here. I kind of see them as different tools in the toolbox, but ones that are intrinsically linked together.
Yep. Yeah, and I agree with all of that. And I like the point of anyone with an audience can build a community, but you do need to kind of intentionally choose to go in that direction and invest in it properly. And I promised producer Viren I would plug Rival Amp at least 3 times on today's episode. So Viren, this one's for you. Here's the third one. That's kind of like what we've done with Rival Amp. We've been building an audience for Rival over the last year, and now we're trying to create an opportunity for that to become a community for those that want to be part of it. That, of course, is under the Rival brand, but it's not about us speaking to people. It's about people speaking to each other. Right. There you go. There's my 3 for today. Jenna, your thoughts, please.
I don't know. I don't think that even most brands should have communities. Like, I don't know. I think that this
is
a
counter opinion for you, Eric.
This is a marketing strategy that makes sense. Again, if you can do it well, but honestly, I think the number of brands and marketers that are capable of actually doing this to the perspective that it adds values is less than 1 in 10, definitely less than 1 in 10. I feel like, to build a community around shared values, for a brand like Universal, in Eric's case, that actually makes sense to me, right? There's some substance there. Again, there's a marketing infrastructure and again, capable people that can do those types of things. I just think that the vast majority of brands, B2B, B2C, there's no fucking reason for those brands to do that. Does every single protein bar manufacturer need to have a community for their protein bar? No, you don't. I don't know. This is just one of those pieces of advice. Not every single one. Not every single one. No, he wouldn't. No,
Huel one. He would join the Huel one.
Huel's not a protein bar. Huel is a meal replacement and complete meal service that's also a lifestyle. I think you'll find the good people at Huel, who are not a sponsor but should be, really
they were one of the early sponsors of the 11FS podcast, actually. So maybe we can retell them that.
I would spend eating. I spend in the Rival Amp community. So that's thanks to Huel.
But does Soylent also need one? If Huel has one, does Soylent also need one? You know what I mean? I don't. Fucking communities are for real life. Communities are not supposed to just be co-opted by the language of capital and marketing. I don't know. That's my weird lefty opinion for the day. Yes, some brands, this makes sense. If your brand really has a cool, interesting reason to believe, the Universal parks, Universal entertainment properties, yes, that absolutely makes sense to me. Huel, again, it does kind of make sense to me. They, as a brand, have kind of, positioned their purpose and their product towards a couple other things. I do also love the Huel Black, and I just bought some of the Huel, the vegan protein. I like a vegan protein powder. That's pretty nice. But not every brand needs this, Strepsils. What's this? Shit, I have to read videos. I'm sick now. That's a consumer-facing brand. Do we need it? What is the community of people with strepsils? Like, I don't know.
I think we should ask the 5 people at Strepsils because I'm guessing they're thinking about this.
So, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? Because Soylent and communities are both made of people. And I think, one of the Soylent Green is people. It's a thing. It's a movie in the 70s. But, to the Strepsils point, I'd say, look, you could have a community, you could get singers. Why not? Like, I think the question is, at the end of the day, how valuable is the community and how much can you scale it? Like, I think the internet has proven that no matter how weird something is, no matter how niche something is, you can find someone else to join a community about it. But at the end of the day, is it going to be large enough? Is it going to be powerful enough? Is it going to be useful enough to return on the investment and the focus that a brand has, right? Like Strepsils as a kind of throat lozenge probably is more useful spending their money in 100 other places before they become a community organizer around throat recovery or voice quality. So I think, it's one of those things where this just has to be balanced out on why would you do this? Yes, you can do it, but is it going to pay off? Because I think, naturally there's a difference between audiences and community, and that audiences scale. You buy a platform, you rent an audience, you're leasing attention. Communities, that's a long-term play. You're not the focus. You're a platform. Effective communities, you provide something for other people to talk about. And that requires a real focus on, is it going to scale the way you want it to? And are you the type of brand that can, Jenna, to your point, gather people around, right? Because the easier and more understandable and cooler your brand is, the easier it is to recruit.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Jenna. Like, I do think that most brands are not staffed for this, ready for this, probably not strategically sound for their business. Communities are deep value. Like, you're getting deep value out of a community, right? Whether it's Jenna brought personal life, whether you're into fandom. I'm a big Survivor fan. If I'm listening to the podcast and I'm going on and talking with people that watch Survivor, there's deep fandom there. If I'm wanting to learn more about marketing and I'm a fan of Rival and I'm connected, I'm getting into this. The fourth one, I'm getting into this community, and there's deep value that I need from that, and I think most places don't have any of that interest. It doesn't even rank in the amount of things that they need to get done. I oftentimes say there's 100 things they need to get done. It would be in the top 100, right? But there are some brands that I think if you can think about what role could we play in kind of culture. And what does our brand stand for? Kind of get into the purpose side of things. And if there is something that you could build community around, I think it's powerful. But I do think it's the very small percentage of brands. And even for those brands, I think a lot of times they still wouldn't rank that as a top priority. So it's a tough one to unlock. But I think the people that are doing it well are seeing great success, but it's not a lot of people that are doing it well.
So I do think that there's a lot of people in this world, and I think there is the potential for any brand or product to find enough people to build a community, because you don't need a lot of people to do it. But I do agree with the overarching sentiment that most businesses shouldn't. And I think to Dubos's point, we talk a lot AI, Web3, a bunch of different topics, but even this, oftentimes it's a solution looking for a problem. And I even go all the way back to kind of the early days of social media, but maybe even still. Solution looking for a problem, we need to do this, not here's how it's going to drive business growth. And also, I think a lot of businesses won't do community or won't get the value out of community. And that's the reason that they shouldn't do it, because it needs to be a long-term investment in order to do it well. For me, and I think I've talked about this before, with all the stuff that we're doing with Rival Media, the content, the events, the community, to me, that's like 2 years. I'm thinking we're going to invest in it for 2 years until we even have a conversation about, is it delivering returns for our business? And I think that's necessary in order to focus on adding value, because that's how you need to do it in order for it to be successful. So I know that we're over on time. I think this has been an amazing conversation. Let's close it out with some quick rants and raves. Jenna, starting with you.
Rant. I am tired of the same millennial brand design aesthetic where all these brands have the same color and font palettes. I just bought some paint from a company called Coat Paints. I don't mean to drag them.
Hitting them on scratch.
Oh, are we? Okay, well, I don't mean to drag them. But their brand is indistinguishable from like other like millennial like sort of like brands. Like the Sill, this is so that like the Sill is like like the American like you can buy like plants on the internet like from them, and they have the exact same design aesthetic. Like if you stack those two like next to each other, like it's the same as like Blank Street Coffee, like and a bunch of others. I'm just tired of the indistinctiveness of like these brands. If only the coat paint folks knew some people who could maybe help them develop a more distinctive visual ID, because I love their product. I just bought a lot of paint from them, but I'm fucking tired of this like millennial.
So I actually, so by the way, the way that we're connected with them is they actually did a photo shoot at our house with my wife's business, my wife's interior design business. But I actually think that that's a question I should ask the CMO when she comes on Scratch. I think that that's totally fair. Maybe I'll play this clip just to start.
Don't do that. I am a customer, so I am, I did just get through a bunch of that. They have really nice paint, and I like.
Despite the visual ID, not because of the visual ID. There's an opportunity.
I mean, admittedly, it did admittedly like signal to me as I'm obviously the consumer for your products. It was effective in signaling that I am probably a buyer of this.
Have you joined the coat community though?
Again, because what is the value of that?
I know somebody I can ask. Dubose, your rant or rave for the week?
So continuing the theme of I'm a customer, so now I can talk about your brand. I want to rave about Verizon, actually. Yes. So it's very funny. On LinkedIn, I'm the only Dubose Cole on LinkedIn, so you can see the post, anyone who's listening. Unless if you find an older ginger man, that's my dad, but he doesn't post a lot. But generally, one of the things, I just moved to the States 3 or 4 weeks ago now, and I've had to get phone service. I had quite an experience with Verizon trying to get it. I won't recap the entire thing, but it took 5 days, about 6 hours, 2 trips to stores, and basically trying to get around the automated document software of proving who I am was so hard. I went into the store to get 3 sales reps to help me basically take an effective picture of my passport. It involved 2 hours and a store manager standing in natural light near Union Square to actually get it to work. But the funny thing here is I posted it on LinkedIn as I think people are amazing in large companies, and systems tend to let them down. Because what was interesting is like the computer systems, the technology systems, the processes were very limited, but everyone I spoke to was super, super helpful. And one of the funny things is the CEO of Verizon actually started commenting underneath it. So now I've had about like 200 Verizon employees come to the post as I think like an inspirational moment where they've engaged with an irate member of the public. But one of the things that struck me is actually like they're just having like conversations at the bottom of the post about like their values and about like, generally how they could change customer service and different processes. And I thought that was really refreshing. I think, generally on these things, when I won't say rage post, because I was quite appreciative of all the employees. When you put something out there, the best you're going to get is thank you for your concern, and we'll do better. And I think it's really interesting on LinkedIn when you find C-suite, especially incredibly senior executives, kind of responding to things, thinking about things, and engaging and using it as I hate the phrase, but a teachable moment, if you will. So yeah, nice one. I mean, don't try to join Verizon with a passport. Go get your driver's license first. But other than that, great experience.
I got into a massive argument with somebody on their analytics team a few months back about how stupid it is that their entire model is on last click attribution, and it did not get nearly this much attention. And I don't think that that's fair, because it is stupid.
Jenna, go to the comments. Start a new thing about last click attribution.
I will.
It's going to go full circle.
Yeah.
You could also start
A rant on the rant.
about last click attribution.
If only I knew a rival M community that you could share that with. Well, never mind. I do.
5 plugs. I hope Aaron's happy. All right, Eric, take us home. Your rant or rave. What are you super passionate about in a positive or negative way this week?
So it's a rave. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, not a pitch to follow me because I'm not quite as active as I'd like to be. But I'm a big fan of what Liquid Death is doing with their brand. I'm not the only one. They're talking
about best they do. Yeah.
Yes, it's not original. They're obviously, Liquid Death or anything that Ryan Reynolds is doing is, getting people's attention right now because they're actually being entertaining and they're actually doing something that it makes people stop. And they shared a video the other day that was with Jalen Green, NBA basketball player, and they created. This is where I love marketing. They use content and branding to create a product. And if you know the Liquid Death brand, you know that it's a water brand that's now going into all sorts of flavored waters. And they do really insane, insane packaging, insane marketing. Well, the latest video that they created is about Jalen Green, and it's called Hoophead, Murder Your Thirst. And it's an actual basketball with the guy's eye popping out like he's been melted or murdered, he killed. They actually, in a basketball game, chop this guy's head off, and his head becomes the basketball for the whole. And kids are playing with this basketball and tossing it around. And I was like, please, God, let this be for sale on their website. And of course it is. You can go buy this Hoophead basketball from Liquid Death for $125. And oh, by the way, you can also pay for them payments using Klarna, 4 interest-free payments of $31.45 a piece. So, I just love for any brand that's doing something different and is then using content to not just build their brand, but to have a little fun. I just feel like there's a phrase to describe them that I can't say about most people in marketing today. I would just say they get it. They get it. And most people don't. And it's pretty refreshing. So that's my rating.
It's a really good one. Yeah, we've talked about Liquid Death a few times because they're one of the top ones out there in terms of pointing to kind of like challenger marketing. Now it's a question because we always talk about challenger brands trying to change a category and what we call rival brands, of course, actually becoming the new incumbent. So what are they going to do when it's no longer just about the niche community? How can they actually scale? Which I think is going to be interesting, but that is a fantastic rave. This has been a long, but very good, very entertaining, very informative episode. If you want to talk about it more, you can join our Rival Amp community and share your thoughts. That's all we have for today. Viren, 6 plugs for Rival Amp. There you go. Eric, thanks so much for joining. See y'all next time.
Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, Dubose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.